Okay, good afternoon, everybody from Mauritius, and thank you for being here today. Hugely appreciated as always. Our webinar CPD talk today is on the new normal remote working team leadership and collaboration. And it's going to be presented by UK presenter, Dr. Teri Okoro, who's obviously a doctor and also a chartered project professional from APM, a fellow from the Royal Institution of British Architects, and a fellow of Association of Project Managers. So the agenda today, we'll do a quick housekeeping as we do from other webinars as well. An introduction to the talk today. We'll have a quick survey. We'll have part one, a quick survey and discussion. Part two, quick survey of discussion. Part three, quick survey and discussion again. And then Q&A as well. So there'll be lots of Q&A, lots of discussion. This is why we want to make that webinar so interactive for everybody to participate. Again, so thank you very much indeed. And I want to just share, for those of you who are new, you will have a view option on the PC, which is at the top of screen, where you can, adjust your screen and the PowerPoint slide when Teri will be showing you, or when I'm showing you as well. The audio screen is on the PC, bottom left-hand side of the screen. If you've got an iPad or an iPhone, most of the tool will be right on top of your screen. If there's to confirm anything like now, can you put your hands up, please? If you can hear me, if you can just put it, yeah, thank you very much. So we can see that it's working. So it's just really to confirm things. If you have any question, please put your question on the Q&A tab as we take questions and answers later on. If you want to leave the meeting, as I say that always, not because you're bored, but if you have a personal reason, then the leave meeting tab is on the right-hand side of your screen. And then we'll have polls in between, of course, as we do, which make it really interactive. That's the whole point of the webinar, is to really engage and draw from your experience from wherever you are. So massive thank you, as always. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank Teri enough to be here and to be part of the experience of the webinar. There will be a certificate attendance. Please, please, please email me your name, your surname, your full name, and email me at anil@cpdtalk.com for a certificate attendance. If you can do it today, that'd be hugely appreciated. The quicker you do it, the better it is for me as well. Who I am then, so I think most of you know who I am, but I love construction, love learning, love sharing, love people. 18 years in the construction industry now, and I'm extremely passionate about giving back and keep sharing what I know to colleagues all over the world. So I want to just share a quote with you, which I've read in the article recently. And this was from Philip Watson, who is a director at IPMA Architect. And he had a blog on working apart can bring a team closer together. So he's saying about the blog, obviously this is an extract from one of the blog. And he goes on to say, we are encouraging activities that ensure our people feel connected and motivated. We are even having a virtual tea break, and the video link that gives us an insight. So the video that we shared when you were doing a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting. So what he goes on to say there is that the video link that gives us an insight into each of the homes are only serving to bring us closer together. So I think that's a really, again, strong comment there. The next one, I think I've mentioned that to my previous webinar, but for those of you who haven't seen that one, another blog from Dr. Jenny Barrett of UCLan, which is the University of Lancashire University. And she talked about home working could be the start of gender parity in construction. It could be anywhere. It's not just construction, but she goes on to say that as digital technology transforms construction, especially now during the pandemic, does it also provide an opportunity for the sector to solve its greatest challenge, i.e. gender inequality? The effects of COVID-19 could change the makeup of the construction workforce forever. Online identities can assume any gender or none. As such, first impression can be based on merit. I think, again, this is a fantastic statement for all of us and for gender equality. Moving on to that one, again, a blog which I read 2 days ago by Ian Parker, who's a partner at Alinea in the UK. And he talked about this pandemic could change the way we work forever. It is. I mean, we are witnessing right now. And the truth is, there's no one size fit all here. And the most appropriate way of working come down to factors such as organization nature of business, company culture, IT budget, client expectation, and so on. But even taking these into consideration, I think that many organizations in our industry will have their eyes open over the next few months to how well work can be done in a remote environment. And this is where Teri will really go deep and share her experience, expertise from the UK to all of us now. Just a quick joke. I saw that. I think we are all inundated by email right now, and we are working long hours as well. So this, there's a message from a CEO there. Please read that attached email about the email I sent yesterday. In reference to flooding the system with too many unnecessary email, please forward this email to your entire staff. So more jamming of email there. So I think I thought I'd share that with you. Next up, I want to share a video before I introduce Teri formally. Just want to make sure that the sound and everything else is okay. And if you can hear the sound, please put your hands up, please. I want to show this impactful video, which really is important as we go into the webinar today. So off we go. Right. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thank you very much indeed, everybody. I think you liked the video. If you do like it, please put your hand up again just to show that you've actually seen it and you've heard it. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just now going to do a poll, and I want to start with a poll before I introduce Teri. Just bear with us, and as I get the poll up, and I just want to make sure we've got the right sharing screen. Awesome. And the poll is up. So fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to do the first poll and starting with everybody here, and I'm just going to launch the polling now. So the first question really is who is enjoying working from home? So be good to know before we really set the scene to Teri to take over. Who's actually enjoying working from home? Please, please, please put your answer in. Hugely appreciated, of course. Who's enjoying working from home? You've got about 20 seconds to go. I think we've been in there, and some of us aren't enjoying it because we've got kids and family. Some of us aren't equipped properly to do our work. Some of us are enjoying it, of course. It depends really on what field you are, which really Teri will obviously elaborate and explore and really dig deep on that. So 75% of you have already voted. Please, please, please put your vote in as we go live for this. So 76%, I'm now gonna stop sharing and share the result with you. And already, as we can see, 72% of you saying, yes, we enjoy working from home. And 28% is saying no. So again, something we can discuss about that one. I'm gonna share the next poll with you before we introduce Teri. Is remote working the future? So please, please, please put your answer in. Is remote working the future now that many of us has been in lockdown for almost 2 months, 2.5 months? Is remote working the future? So please, please, please put your honest view. Something again will get Teri to really engage a conversation with you as we introduce Teri in about a few minutes time. So 75%, 76% of you are voting right now, and 70%, please, please, please put your vote in. Is remote working the future of the industry? So I'm going to stop polling now. 80% have voted, and I'm going to share the result with you. So the result is here. 87% is saying yes, we do enjoy remote working, and 13% is saying no. So again, put your question and answers as to why you hate remote working or you don't want to be working remotely. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And then thank you for that. So I'm just going to write this down. 87% have said yes, and 30% say no. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Right, so I want to just share this with you before I introduce Teri. So Teri was in the APM magazine in 2018, in autumn 2018. I'm sure she's been again, but this was one of the one I had from her when she came in Mauritius. She talked about empowerment, diversity, and she's a great role model for all of us in Africa, in the UK, technically a global role model, So she was also part of the Women in Places in Mauritius, where she talked about empowerment, diversity, the various role and inspiring stories and the role models. So Teri's there, and she was an inspiration to all of us here. And the ladies all, most of us were from Mauritius, and the 4 speakers here. There was Anusha from the UK, Dr. Mata from the UK, and Louise Brooks-Smith, president of RICS. So Teri was already connected with us from, in some sort of way. So Teri in Mauritius, that was in September 2018 when Teri was here for the PMI Africa. So Teri was already here, and she talked on leadership competencies and challenges. So I want to introduce Teri formally. Dr. Teri Okoro is a chartered professional, a fellow of the RIBA, fellow of RPM, is a director of TOCA, a design and project management consultant, founder of P3M Africa, which is specialized in research and consultancy with an Africa focus. A practicing architect and a chartered project professional with an MBA. She also undertakes business change project and draws on over 20 years of experience, most involving remote team working. Teri represents internationally on project management, quality project outcome, and inclusive leadership. She has judged several international architecture, design, and project award, and is a qualified IPMA Project Excellence Assessor. She authored the APM 4th leadership paper on inclusive project management practices, joining the dance, several articles and academic papers, and also edited P3M Africa Scorecard of the profession in Africa. Africa Project Program and Portfolio Management Resource. So please put your hands up, please, to Teri as I move on to Teri. So please welcome Teri, everybody. A quick round of applause as we've got 200 of you here listening to Teri. So big smile from Teri here. from London. So Teri, thank you for being here. We can't thank you enough for your time, effort that you put in to be here today. So try to share your screen. Pressure's on, of course. So, and then we'll take from there. I'll be here to assist you, Teri, no problem. Yeah, so your screen is coming up and I'm just gonna unmute you. We can't hear you, Teri, we can't hear you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, if you can hear Teri,
okay,
please,
that's great.
put your hands up.
It's good to be with you and to see that you're all enjoying working from home. And probably you have the right equipment there. If you don't have the right equipment, I'll just try to move this slide on. Move on to the next item.
Yeah.
So we've already done an introduction of me, and this is what I'll cover during the session. I'll be looking at context and challenges. You are all enjoying it, but I'm sure some of you have challenges. Looking at leadership strategies. If you're leading a remote team, what should you be doing to make their life easier? Engaging team members and stakeholders, because obviously it's not just the team members, there's other people you're working with who you shouldn't forget about. And then really quite important, the technology. What tools are we using to collaborate with others? There's one small final slide, which would be some takeaways for you all. So I'm hoping it'll be really interactive and that you'll all be asking questions. There are some polls which we'll be undertaking. With my presentation, I really want to know who you are, who's out there. So could we have that poll just to find out who the delegates are, who are in the audience? That would be great.
Yeah.
Can have that first one.
What, the first poll, yeah? So
yes,
yeah, fantastic.
Yes. Who is out there? What are the roles and things? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Teri. So I'm just going to launch the first polling, and the first polling goes out. And Teri, you can see it as well, I believe.
Yes.
What is your role? So are you a project program leader or director? Are you a project delivery professional, architect, engineers? Please don't lie. Business owner or CEO, or you can make yourself a CEO of the day-to-day if you want. Project team member or other. So what's your role? What is your role? You've got about 30 seconds left. And project or program leader, director, project delivery professional, architect, engineers, business owner or CEO, project team member or other. So 68% of you have voted already. And again, what are your role, or what are you here today, and what's your title of the company you're working currently? 79% of you have voted. We've got 10 seconds left. As I shared to Teri about whether you're a project program leader, project delivery professional, business owner, project team member. So I'm just going to stop voting now, and then I'm going to share the result with Teri right now. So Teri, as you can see, 9% is a project program leader, 28% is a project delivery professional, 8% business owner or CEO, 25% is a project team member, and 30% are others.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. So we have people who are professionals, but I imagine that some of them are leading teams, and we also have team members, and it's amazing who's in that category. I imagine that you must be involved in some kind of projects at some time, or maybe you've been a team member or led a team member at some point. So hopefully I'll have something useful for all of you. But surprising that there's not so many leaders there. But at the end of the day, leading is something which we all do. So maybe we can just find out where people are located, in the world. Where are you located? It will be interesting to see. So maybe we can just have that other poll to see where people are actually located.
Okay. So let me just look at the next one Teri. So so the next poll is a quick one. Is your team business unit in one location, different location of same city, different cities of same country, different countries of same continent, or different continent? It's a tricky one, so take your time. I'm confused myself. But
yeah.
is your team business unit in one location? Is it in different location in the same city? Different cities of same country? Different countries of same continent? Or different continent, full stop? So for me, it's just one location. So I know I've just ticked one location. So we've got about 20 seconds left. Is your team business unit in one location, different location of same city, different cities of same country, different countries of same continent, or different continent? So 80% of you have voted, and I'm just going to end polling now. So share the result. So Teri, that's the result for you right now. 34% one location, 9% different location of same city, 35% different cities of same country, 7% different countries of same continent, and 15% different continent.
Okay, yeah, so that's quite interesting. So more than 70%, I imagine, are in the same country, probably 80%, but there's another sort of 20% of people who are working with different continents or different countries of the same continent. When it's the same continent, it's usually not too difficult in time zones, but when you're dealing with a different continent, you have to take that added factor in, and sometimes it's quite a few hours difference. So I'll be talking about those challenges as well. But the fact that you're in one location doesn't make it any easier when you have to do remote working.
Yeah.
You're not seeing each other, especially if you've been working together face to face, and then suddenly you're thrown remote. So what I'll do is move on to my next slide now and talk about where all this global working from. So today we're all living in a global world, aren't we? Yes, we are. Technology has really moved on. We have it at the tip of our fingers. And for you with your mobile phones, which are in your pockets, you don't realize how powerful these are. In fact, the mobile phones that we have today are more powerful than the computer that took man to the moon. Do you know that? You know, it's about 100,000 times more powerful. So we don't really appreciate it. Sometimes we clog it up with photos and run out of space, but it actually is able to do a lot more than we can imagine. So ease of technology, better technology, ease of communications means that we're all able to do business more globally at the tip of our fingers. We all have multinational companies working within our countries, and we're parts of those teams. Even when we're undertaking projects in our own country, it's funded internationally by consortiums. So we are having to work with quite a range of companies. We're no longer alone. Most of us, like we saw in the poll, have even if it's just in the same country. And then sometimes some of us are having to wrestle with people in different continents. So ease of travel, the computers, laptops where you can work anywhere, even on your mobile phone, you can work anywhere. So when we look at projects, the whole triangle of quality, time, and I'll just move back. Always the relevant factors, additional factors that come in, like who are the stakeholders we're having to deal with. So we have to be careful when we're working with foreign projects. Drivers, this continent may be wanting a different success outcome than we are. So whether you're providing your services within a project environment, or you are just doing your day-to-day work and working with teams in various places, it's quite important that you're taking the global context into consideration. not just in the construction sectors, I know most of you are, but in the general sectors and economy, retail, etc., so that lots of goods are imported from abroad, both for construction as well as retail. So we really are in a global world. But let's move on and see. I put on that VOCA there, and I didn't actually explain what that is. I'm sure most of you have come across that term, but if you haven't, VOCA means volatile, it means unpredictable, it means complex, and it also means ambiguous. And that's the way the world is today. Something happens in one part of the world and it actually impacts other people. Think about the 9/11. When that happened, air travel everywhere was affected. Think of our current situation now, the pandemic. COVID-19, it started in China, which seems so far away, but it has impacted all of us. So we're no longer operating just in our own national borders. We're operating in a context where something happens abroad and it impacts us. And how well are we thinking about how that impact will affect us? Are we looking ahead and future proofing our operations? Are we just waiting for it to come to us and then trying to react at that point? So we need to be aware of the context in which we're working. We need to be aware that it's really quite a volatile context, and how are we preparing? I mean, many companies who are better organized have something which they call business continuity plans. Obviously, the pandemic may not have been taken into account then, but I wonder how many of you within your organizations, whether large or small, have business continuity plan. That makes sure that you've covered most eventualities, and when something like a pandemic is additional, then you're just adding extra layers for you. For me as an architect here in the UK, a lot of the clients who are working with are asking us, have we updated our business continuity plans, because they want to be sure that you're still operating and you still have the resource to operate during a pandemic. So that's something to think in mind. Even if your clients are not asking you for this, they may well be asking for that in the future. Okay, so we'll just move on to the next to see what people are doing. So 52% of people, and this is a survey which was carried out in the United States, are actually working remotely at least one day a week. 60% of the adult population in the UK are now working remotely. It would have been higher, but some people and some jobs just do not allow you to work remotely. Some people facing work you can still do online. You know, there's lots of increase in telehealth. GPs are no longer seeing patients. But some people who actually have to undertake their role in a specific place cannot. But most people are looking for ways in which they can work remotely. So that's quite a high percentage. When you look at people who are probably just doing it one day a week, now you're having to do it 5 days a week. That 92% figure there relates to collaboration tools. So quite a few people are already using collaboration tools. But I imagine that most of these, and I think it was about 27, less than 30%, said that the tools they were using were the tools which relate to what I'll call repositories, which is where documents are placed in one location where people can access it. So you're probably aware of things like Dropbox, maybe Box, where people can share documents, and there's sort of more other tools which are related to enterprises. Some of these are free, some of this you have to pay for. So we need to be aware that people are already working remotely and they are already using tools. But it's really now in a situation where you may not have using it to a great extent, and you really want to explore what's out there, what more can we do? Or maybe you've been using it for one particular group of staff. People like designers have been used to working collaboratively, but maybe not other people. So you're looking to scale these tools up to work with a wider range of people within your organization.
Teri, just a quick one, Teri, before you move on to the next slide. I've got a few questions coming in.
Okay.
And I think it's good to take the question as well. There's one colleague from saying, you know, you mentioned about VUCA, V-U-C-A.
Yes. Yeah.
What the A stand for? What's the A stand for?
Ambiguity. So lack of clarity, because sometimes it's just like now, we can't really see what the future is. We know that things are changing, but we cannot foresee all what's happening. Or sometimes you start a project and you're not quite clear that you have all the elements you require, but you still have to go ahead. So we're now working in a situation where we do not have full clarity. Projects or any work we undertake, there's always elements which we just decide we have to take some risk. And some people are more risk averse than others. Some people say, yes, I can take this level of risk. Other people may step back and say, gosh, this is too much risk for me. I'm not going to go ahead. But I'd say that in Africa, we're people who deliver projects, they are more risk averse, whereas in Europe and the rest of America, there's been a lot more certainty in the countries. Like the interest rate is not so volatile, exchange rate is not so volatile. Prices when you're going out to tender are not so volatile. So people have had a lot of consistency within. So this situation where there's just so many more unknowns, I imagine that people in Africa, maybe Asia, is better able to cope with it, because that's been the order of the day for some time.
Okay, awesome, thank you. We've got one more question from Michael from South Africa. And he's saying, will working remotely mean less efficiency? And do we just have to accept that the norm of the future? So Michael from South Africa is saying, will working remotely mean less efficiency? And do we just have to accept this as the norm for future?
Okay, it doesn't have to be less efficiency, but obviously when you move to a new way of working, when change happens in any situation, things slow down for a while. And we know that if you do not have the right tools, I mean, there's that saying that the bad workman blames his tool, but if you don't have the right tools, then you're not able to work efficiently. So it's all about having the appropriate tools to deliver the work. But even when you work remotely, we'll see in one of the slides that it's always important to still have some face-to-face contact if possible, because 100% remote is less than ideal. But if you have to do that, you have to make the best of it. But even when you work in remote teams, initially, it's always best to have that initial face-to-face contact, you get to know each other, and then you go to your remote locations and work. We're lucky that most of us know the people we're working with remotely now, because we've been working with them face to face. But there are virtual teams who are dispersed around the world who may not have even had the opportunity to meet the people they are working with. But there are ways to overcome this, and I'll touch upon it as I go along.
Okay, Teri, thank you very much indeed. We've got a few questions coming up, but I'll let you go with the presentation and we'll pick up some questions later.
Yes. So working remotely, the new way we're working, which is increasing, and now we've all obviously had to just frog leap into it. There are challenges, numerous. I mean, there are advantages because many of you have said you're enjoying it, but let's look at the challenges. Some of them are technical, hardware, Do you have the correct laptop or tablet? Because if this happens so quickly, maybe your employer or the business had not had time to equip everyone, and so you may be using your home computer, which may not be so up to date, quite slow. Also, you may have the hardware, but do you actually have the software to be able to work efficiently? Some of us have to use technical software. Are these available on your home computer? Also, are they available on the cloud for you to access? Data connectivity, we know that this could be a problem. Is it constant? Who is paying for it? Has it been paid for? Does it cut off? Because if you're using a video, you need good connectivity compared to maybe if you're just doing an audio. So that is a problem, because some people, where their homes are, they don't actually have good data reception there. Security. And I was listening to a webinar the other day, and they were saying this is a problem. There's more attempts at hacking people now, because a lot of employees are working from home. They are logging in from home, and they're opening up those emails with the malware onto their computers, and they're able to get into their organization systems. So something which you have to be careful about when you're working remotely. Alignment. Are you aligned with your suppliers, your contractors, and other people you're working with? Because if you're not, you may have one system, they may not have it, and you're not able to continue co-creating. But we know that a lot of the more efficient systems that we have now, especially for video conferencing, you don't actually have to download it. If people give you the link, you're able to click on the link, and if you're doing quite technical stuff, it's quite important that you think about that. People, relationships, some very well, particularly if it's a very large team. How do you maintain the relationship? If one person is managing 100 people, it is going to be really difficult to maintain that one-to-one. And communication, sometimes it's actually too much communication, and people are saying, I'm being invited to so many Zoom meetings and all whatnot. You can't actually get your work done because people feel that they just have to communicate competent. Some people may not actually be able to work with these new tools and work remotely. The IT goes down. There's no IT department to call to come and assist you, to connect or to download the software. Culture. Not everybody is used to working remotely. Some people are used to working in teams. Suddenly you're having to work remotely. How do you cope on your own? You're that person who loves your 5-minute catch up by the water cooler in the kitchen while you're making your coffee. Suddenly you're stuck on your own. You're one of those outgoing sort of people. It's going to be difficult. Context as well. You may not actually have a suitable place at home to do the work. You don't have a table, you don't have, or there may be a lot of you struggling to try to use that internet connection. If it's a couple, the children trying to do schoolwork. Suitability, like I said, it's not convenient for all people. And then there's procedure, because some organization, it takes a long time to put these new procedures in place and red tape. So the situation arises that you're all having to stop work suddenly, and they've not actually taken the time to put new procedures in place. Supply chain, apart from the alignment, you have to think, if you're a business who's working with other people, are your supply chain able to work remotely? And also sometimes looking up at your client. If your client is a secure client, maybe you're working for the armed forces or government, they may want you to be working in a really secure environment, especially if you're having to access their own equipment as well. So really, all of these have to be taken into consideration. you may not have the funding to buy the equipment for all the people to work at home. And also, we've heard about mental well-being, people working remotely, not able to access their line manager, they're stuck with the work, and it's actually affecting people's well-being. So if you're living at home with lots of people, working remotely is fine, but if you're living alone, it's quite difficult. If you're away from your family, it's quite difficult. So all of these challenges, like the question we had, can actually affect productivity. But if you get things right, then productivity may come down at the beginning, but later on it will go up again.
Yeah. And Teri, as we do next, do you want to take a quick question or do you want to continue?
Yeah, let's have a quick question, because the next one is just following on productivity. So let's have another question.
Yeah, let's get some question quickly as we get to the question. So there's a question from Kevin, who's a chartered quantity surveyor, and he's asking you, are these considered as business continuity plan? Ability to work from home, enough fund in the company's bank account to cater for the staff for the next few months?
Yes, those are the sort of things which will be your business continuity plan, because the business continuity plan covers things like, what if your office is flooded? Can you continue your business? What if there's a power cut in the area? Can you continue your business? What if there's a fire in your premises? Can you continue your business? So it's things like, do you have your data stored off-site? Are staff able to continue? And also, you already have a plan in place. So this is something which I had anyway, because to work with some particular clients, they want to see that. But what they were asking for now was just for like an update, because in the past, you could have had your team located together in another location, but now your team are all having to work remotely. And so your business continuity plan may not have taken that into consideration. So it's something which you all have to think about now. It's part of risk management anyway. And for some organizations, you may have insurance cover for some of that. Like if you lose information on your computer, you may be insured for that. So you need to look at the small print insurances, because you may be covered for some elements which may actually help you now.
Yeah, I've got another question quickly before we move to the next slide. I will get to Sarita and Prabhu as well. There's a question from Rupesh, who's a registered engineer. And he's saying to you, working remotely could potentially make on-the-job training more difficult for young engineers who are often given work that has been broken down into simplified tasks for more complex system. The idea is to slow induction in order to design work, detect and correct their mistake early on. How could we still train young professionals if we are working remotely?
Yes, I mean, that is a difficulty, but it's finding ways to overcome it. Because I work with people in my organization who are not always as competent as me. They're still learning the skills. And some of the things I do is, instead of waiting for them to come to the end of the task, sometimes you actually share the screen and you're able to look at what they are doing, so that they've not gone so far in the wrong direction. So we actually will need to plan our work differently if we cannot be with people all the time. But using technology, there's a way in which you can share things so that people are learning. And I'll talk about some of those other tools which you can use, where even if you're working remotely, you could still be messaging and things. So I think that's quite important. But training can happen online as well. It's not just within the workplace, having workshops where people are co-creating, even though they're remotely located. So yes, it does offer challenges. Especially even now, I have remote sites where I cannot visit. So some of the work is being done by them sending me videos and photographs. But also I have to make some planned visits where they clear the site because we have to do this social distancing, and I can go around and take some photos and record things, because you don't want to be making payments every month for so long without actually seeing things. You want to be able to pick up if there's any errors early on.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Teri.
Present challenges.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's continue with the presentation, and then we've got 3 more questions, but we can take that afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so I did speak about productivity and performance, and again, it comes in the same in the similar categories. We've spoken about technical, so I wouldn't spend too much time there. But leadership, and this actually brings us to that question, because if people are working remotely, there needs to be good planning. And you actually highlighted what are the deliverables, so people know what they're doing. There's nothing like saying, yes, you get on with the work, because if it's already been planned and broken down into segments, then people know what they're working with. We'll look at tools which people can use for collaboration, because there's lots of project management tools, things like Kanban boards or to-do lists, which people can share, you know who's working on what. So those are things which can assist collaboration. Engagement is actually checking on you, what you're doing. You may be getting on with it and sending it through, and no one is actually coming back to you and giving you feedback. Morale, if no one is coming back to you and giving you feedback, or it may be a situation where you feel, I don't even know what the future of my job is, I may be let go, and you're working remotely, how can you do your best? You know, motivation. If there's no one coming and saying you're doing a good job, you know, we appreciate it, yeah, that task you submitted, you did well, how can you continue? It's just one direction, you're providing stuff and sending it through, nothing is coming back, you're not sure how the team is performing overall. Developing, this is what we spoke about, training people, because if people are not so experienced, they need to be developing. You need to be given what I call stretch tasks, things which allow people to grow. And also, if people have certain weaknesses, you give them the opportunity to grow. Although there's a school of thought that says sometimes it's better to work on people's strengths than trying to develop their weaknesses. Yeah. But people need to be a bit rounded in a sense. So we've spoken about culture, context, and skills before. All those sort of things impact productivity. Yeah. So really, is the communication adequate? Is the collaboration adequate? Those are really important in terms of performance and productivity.
Okay, yeah.
It's not always easy to assess, because if you were able to actually measure productivity before you started working remotely, then you could measure it when you start working remotely. There may be a downturn, but when people get used to it and have the correct tools, then it should come back up to productivity is low. It's something which needs to be picked up quite early, so that people don't get used to a different way of working. That is not so productive. On to the leadership section, and I think we have a poll on leadership, do we?
Yeah. So we have I think we have a poll here. You can have a breather, and then I can just ask you the leadership question. So let me just check quickly, and then I'll share that with everybody. Yeah. So there's a poll. That's part 3, but we can share it now. So, and then you can have a breather, Teri, because you've shared some really important stuff. So are you a manager or a leader watching us right now? So we've got 205 of you right now watching us. And are you a manager or are you a leader? Please let us know as we go through. And that'll be obviously be good to know, because as we get to know the percentage of who is leader and manager, you can make yourself a leader as well if you want today, no problem, because we won't know. But but yeah, for the sake of the exercise today, are you a manager or are you a leader? Please let us know. We've got about 20 seconds left. 70% of you have voted. So are you a manager or a leader? So again, please put the percentage in there. 72% of you have voted. So I'm just going to stop polling now. Again, we've got 2 more seconds, and here we go. So I'm going to share the result with you all here today. And we have 71% of you are leaders in your own field watching us right now. And we've got about 29% of you who are saying that you're managers. So Teri, this is the first question goes to you.
Yes.
So just bear with me on that one before we move to the next one. And then there was one question which which you shared as well with everybody. And this one is, I think it'd be good to connect that with the leadership and managerial task.
Yeah.
And this one is, how often did you work remotely before COVID? So never, few times a year, few times a month, once a week, few days a week, or daily. How often did you work remotely before COVID-19? Never, few times a year, few times a month, once a week, few days a week, or daily. So 60% of you have voted, and I'm going to share the result now. So Teri, this is your result. 40%.
Yeah, that's interesting. 40% had never worked remotely.
Wow.
And it's amazing that sometimes some people had gone to ask their employer for the possibility of working remotely, and they say, oh no, it's not possible. Then come COVID, and suddenly everybody's able to work remotely. It's amazing. But the thing is that we need to look at the culture of work. And the culture of work was people going to a particular place. It was lots of men. Women were not always in the workplace because they were home looking after the kids. And so the culture of work was people going to a workplace to work. And as technology has come and changed things, work has not always kept up with the technology. And we find that it's when it's sometime like a war where they needed more women to go out to work, or now COVID where they said everyone can go and work from home. Those are sort of systematic changes that occur in the context of work. So 5% worked daily, 10% few days a week. I mean, but the rest of you, it was not really that much. So it's quite a change now. Let's see what the next poll is saying, or where people are now.
Okay, so this is a good one. This is your poll now coming up. And this one, again, we need your honest discussion on that one. How often have you worked remotely since COVID? Wow, this is a great question. How often have you worked remotely since COVID-19? How often have you worked remotely since COVID-19? Never, few times a month, once a week, few days a week, or daily. How often have you worked remotely since COVID-19? So you've got the option of saying never, few times a month, once a week, few days a week, or daily. So 70% of you have voted, and I'm just going to share the result with our speaker today. And 7% says never in COVID, 7% say a few times a month, but going on daily, 60%. So it's kind of
yes. So yeah, that's a change. That is a change, and many people are doing it a few days a week now. So we can see that already there's a shift in the way we work. And for those people who's never, it may be because their role doesn't allow them to work remotely, or maybe the employer does not have the technology for them to work remotely. So we can see that now 70% of us are working remotely. So this is something which is going to become more commonplace, which we really have to start thinking about. Our employers have to start thinking about how do we work remotely, and do we have the right tools?
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting, because it's not just you as a team member, it's also the leadership of the organization. So what is leadership? We can see that leadership is all about empowering other people, inspiring other people so that they can successfully deliver change initiatives. Obviously, this definition comes from project management, because as project managers, we're always delivering change. It's not business as usual. We're delivering buildings, we're delivering change to organization, we're delivering transformation. But a leader is somebody who is empowering and inspiring others, because it's others who actually deliver. The leader is there, sort of pushing them on to deliver. So we asked that poll, how many people were leaders and how many people were managers. And I think we had a higher percentage who said they were leaders compared to managers.
70%.
But the thing is, yeah. So the thing is that let's look at the stuff of Africa, because my organization P3M undertook a survey a few years back. This was a survey in Africa of people undertaking projects, and we're sort of saying, what are your challenges? And you can see that the first one, leadership, that was considered a high area of challenge for people, because they felt that they were not getting the right leadership in them delivering their projects. But when you go down, you can also see that apart from project funding, which is always an issue, people were also saying they didn't have the skilled staff or team members. But I mean, if staff are not skilled, it means that they've not been developed. So that's also back to leadership. If you recruit people without the skills, you have to train them up. But we can see also use of technology was a problem. Either they were not using it or they didn't know how to use it. So there's quite a few challenges linked to technology, linked to staff development, and how we're going to address it is some of the things which we're going to be looking at in the section of this presentation. Leadership quite specifically, it's important to remember that leadership is a verb. It is not a noun. It's not just about being a leader. Leadership is an active thing. You don't have to be a leader to show leadership. In your own role, in the task which you're undertaking, you can show leadership. In fact, sometimes the people with the title leader are not always showing the best practices of leadership. Most of all who come from a technical background, the way we moved into senior management and leadership is that you delivered your project very well, you were very good technically, and then you were moved on to be a manager. You were asked to lead people, but you were not actually given additional skills in being a manager. So you just have to fumble your way along as you go. And I'm sure that is right for many people. So that was where, when I undertook my MBA, there was so much more I learned that equipped me to be a better leader, especially as I had some board roles and I wanted to be able to deliver board, other board members. So now we're going to be looking at you move on from being a technical leader to being a managerial leader. So here we can see the difference between manager and leader. And for those of you who said you were managers, you need to look careful at it. Those of you who said you were leaders, you need to look carefully at it, because actually, at the end of the day, you need a bit of both. So manager is quite a task focus. So those are people from the technical backgrounds who are saying you do it like that and you do it like that, focusing on the task. Actually, if you want to grow, you have to take on additional skills and actually drop some of the old skills, because there's not enough space to be doing everything. Otherwise, you'll still be doing your role as a technical person and trying to do your leadership. So some of that technical role needs to be delegated to other people. As a technical person, you were a specialist who knew everything about the technical role. But as a leader, you become a people's focus. You need to be more general, assisting with the technical, but yes, developing your managerial skill. Managers are a lot of analysts, very rational. As a leader, you're looking at behaviors, making sure that the team can work together, well integrated. Manager, you're a tactician, how to, get that project delivered. But leader, you have to be visionary. You're looking beyond that project even. You're looking at what links and relationships you can build for the next project. You're looking at strategy of the organization. Because if you're delivering a project that doesn't fit in with the organization now strategy, then what's the point? What's the benefit? Manager, they say you're like a bricklayer, getting it right, calculating. Leader, you're like the architect who has the overall view. You can see the final thing. Problem solver, dealing with issues as they arise. Leader, you set the agenda saying this is what we do, this is where we're going. Manager, you're a warrior, fighting battles. Leader, you're the diplomat who's going and talking to people to get things done. You know the right ears that you need to talk to.
Yeah.
Moving the status quo on. Leader, you take risks because you want to move forward. You want to move the agenda. So some of the difference is the focus on the vision as opposed to just a task, looking at outputs and the benefits you're getting from that project. But in a sense, you cannot just leave all of your managerial experiences behind. You need a bit. So as you're making the transition from manager to leader, don't drop everything. You'll need some long everything. Otherwise, you'll be working 24/7 trying to get it all done because you're doing the work which you can do others. So looking at the elements of leadership, you can see the helicopter there. That's the helicopter view for the vision, the big picture. Communication is at the center because you have to constantly do that. Emotional intelligence, that is becoming increasingly important. You need to be able to read people, read the people within your team, read your stakeholders, read the other people in the C-suite of your organization, the CEO, the board members, and so that you alter your style and approach in relation to that. Context awareness. You need to be aware, especially now, the context is changing. So if you had not planned for or provided for context change, you're going to be learning quite quickly now. Flexibility. It's not just one style, that sort of command and control. You need to be able to adapt your style to the changing project, to the changing stakeholders, to the changing context. So you need a range of skills as leader, a range of behaviors. But quite important is that communication, building relationships, and altering your style and approach to suit the situation. So you have to know yourself. You have to be authentic, but also if that authentic self is not the right self, you need to develop it to be a better self of who you are. You're dealing with your team. Your team could be a larger team, a smaller team, but there's a whole range of others. You need links with your professional context, your sector context. Are you an architect, an engineer, a QS, or it may be somebody more generic. What sector are you operating in? Are you operating in aviation? Is it retail? Is it residential? How well do you know your context? As a leader, you have to be on top of your game. but you have to also be looking at the national and the global context. You can't limit yourself only to what's happening around you, because what's happening abroad will eventually come to you. It will eventually affect you. So in addition to your project context, you need to look at that, know yourself. What gaps do you have? Where do you have to compensate? It's not just you developing others, you need to develop yourself. Questions coming on, but I'll just carry on because the next slide is what happens in a crisis, and we are in a crisis now. Apart from having that helicopter view and that emotional intelligence, you need resilience. You've got to be strong. There'll be so many things knocking you back. You need to be able to bounce back. You need to be looking at the short-term context. Some decisions you make are, how can we operate next week? You make those decisions, put the plans in place, but also you need to be looking at the long term. So what happens in a month from now? So some decisions you make quickly so that people can still keep working, but also it has to be linked to your organization's priorities. Can you keep all the projects going? Or are they just setting projects which are priority projects, which are the ones you have to keep going? You need to make decisions at speed. People can't wait for you to be dithering. Even if it's the wrong decision, you can always come back and change it, but you need to act quickly. If you don't act quickly, quite often there's financial damage occurring. Projects may suffer, things happen. So in addition to communicating, maintaining your relationship, you have to adapt your style, because it may not be what you'd been doing previously that will work at this time of a crisis.
Yes.
You change your crisis and you look at the short term, and you are a true leader. The task has a manager will.
Yeah.
I don't know, any more questions coming up, or shall I just carry on?
No, let me now take a poll, because your poll is timely with what you've got, and then we'll take a few questions because we've got, so I'm just going to launch the poll because I think Teri's slide on the helicopter view plus the EI, the EQ. So I'm just going to share that with everybody, and let's take them over. So here we go. Has leadership style and processes changed with remote working? So
that's within your organization or something like that, or you?
Yeah. So has leadership style and processes changed with remote working? Have you seen the true colors of your leaders and managers? And have you seen a paradigm shift? And as Teri mentioned, there has been a shift from, when we voted earlier about, 40% of you said you've never worked remotely, and then 60% are now working in COVID. So already there's a massive contrast. So has leadership style and processes changed with remote working? 67% of you have voted. Has leadership style and processes changed with remote working? So I'm just going to stop voting now and end the polling. And I'm going to share that with Teri's view. And then Teri, maybe you can sum up on that. 87% says yes, leadership style and processes have changed. What's your views on that, Teri?
Yeah, and that is right. We expect to see a change because it's not just business as usual now. Things have moved on. And in fact, when we come out of this, we may not actually go to where we were when we started this process. And so it has changed. It may continue to change. It may be that people go back to working from the office, but gradually, and so we'll see that there has to be a change. And also maybe processes were put in place. They're not working so well. They get feedback and they change them, and that's the way it should be. Not that they say, okay, we've done this for remote working, and you now just get on with it. So we're hoping that people are able to give feedback. They're being requested for feedback. Leadership is looking at its style, looking at the outcome, what's working, what's not working, and then tweaking it a little bit. Okay. So yes, so that's quite interesting, and that's what I will expect.
Okay, so let me take some questions. We've got about 40 minutes to go, so we've got a few questions as well. So Teri, the question is from Ashwin. Who is going to be blamed if ever a confidential info leaks during remote working. So of course now, because it's like a cocktail of working in at home, remote
Yeah.
working. So who do we blame? What's just your
Yeah.
view?
So,
Just your views.
I mean, security is a big issue, and everybody needs to take responsibility for that. You know, you have to be careful about what you're clicking, you know, what you're opening, so it doesn't let malware in. And also, if you're sending an email or whatever, you need to recheck who are you sending it to, you know, to make sure it's going to the right person. Because certain things which are like admin at, you just click on that, it may be the wrong organization. And I must put my hand to heart and said, I've done that before. So now I always make sure, you know, who you're going. But actually, if you're using some of the more sophisticated collaboration tools, then actually you're not sending secure information because they're there in a repository where people can go and access it. So that's where some of these modern collaboration tools are actually a safer way of working. And so it may be if that occurs, then your organization needs to look at the way it collaborates with others. So rather than you sending sensitive documents together, they're actually in one place where people with the right clearance can go and access them.
Yeah, I've got another question from Prabhu. This was a question he put in half an hour ago. Hello, Dr. Teri. Thank you very much indeed for the wonderful presentation. You have been talking about globalization and sourcing of goods and services to achieve competitive advantage. More specifically, we are talking about global supply chain. Undeniably, businesses have been disrupted. Working from home is surely advantageous for many sectors, but the construction sector is left with no options. The construction supply chains is also a different supply chain, which is much more project-based compared to others which are process-based. What advice do you have for, you know, the construction industry to recover from the actual disruption? Few words on any advice. How do you recover from the construction industry?
Yeah. Okay, so I guess that it varies from country to country, because here in the UK, a lot of construction sites shut down. Not all of them did, but then what happened was that they worked together with the government to create some guidance so that they could exercise social distancing while working. So it meant that people are maintaining the distance. On the larger side, they're working on different floors and things, so they were able to continue. But I know that early on in all of this, at least on one of my sites, they said that their suppliers had shut down, or the cost of certain materials had suddenly just gone up. But that was a temporary blip, and things have normalized. But obviously, there's some backlog, whereas now you're expecting that the mechanical subcontractors will come on site, but there's a backlog somewhere else. So it's a case of replanning, trying to collaborate with these people. And that's where maintaining relationships all through this will have been quite helpful, because you'll be able to know where they are, keep on top with them. And it's not that there's blank in communication for some time, and then suddenly they come back 6 weeks later and you're trying to find out what's happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, if things are coming from abroad, they may have been disrupted. If materials are coming from abroad, there'll be price increases. So it's important to look at your particular project context, you know, be upfront with the client. You need to look at what clauses of your contract are actually going to cover you for this. You know, is it force majeure or something like that? So also the industries, I know that lots of industry and professions are giving out guidance. You know, the Architect Institute, there's lots of webinars and things. So it's important to tap into all of that, because you're not alone. It's a whole sector.
So Teri,
yeah.
Just a quick one at the back of this before we complete this question. Do you think, especially in Africa and developing countries, will there be a rise in off-site manufacturing?
You know that off-site manufacturing is something which has been around for some time, and actually the industry has been quite slow to welcome it. Even here in the UK, they're still very slow. And we're thinking that now there may be increased uptake. But the thing is that with anything like this, it's not just the pull, you've got to push people towards it. There's got to be something in it for them. So whereas here, the government is sort of saying, well, maybe the new projects we're funding a certain percentage of it, so people are forced to do it. But if the insurers are also saying, oh, we don't know about this project, we only want to insure traditional. So it's got to be everything aligned. Yeah. So offsite has its advantages that people are able to work in a factory situation. It may not work for everything, but it's a case of, can we have a lot more that is manufactured offsite, so that we're limiting what is done on site? Obviously, if you're putting in the pile foundations and the footings, you still have to do that on site. But if it's something above ground, then there's the possibility of that. And it's something which I encourage. People say, oh, it's a bit more cost. But if more people are using it, it brings down the cost. So it's maybe people coming together to say, let's use this system. And if there's that numbers, then maybe it will bring the cost down.
Yeah, just a quick one before we move to the next slides. There's a question from Sarita. Business continue plan, BCP. So the business continue plan in many organizations are more focused on the technical or on the technological aspect of the organization, whereas a BCP should encompass enterprise-wide resources, including people, facilities, logistics, and above the technology size. Many companies have unfortunately realized it during this pandemic. How would you sensitize leaders on the completeness of their BCPs?
That's it. I think now, I mean, people are learning, and people need to start checking the adequacy of their documents. If it's one thing that comes out of this, is people reflecting and saying, where were we not adequate? What can we do next time? And so if there's a situation where when you go back to the company and there's reflection, then you can highlight that this was where we didn't do so well. And it shouldn't be all about negatives. It should be about, yes, we did well here, we didn't do so well here, and how can we prepare better for the future? Like I said, some leaders have just gone from technical management skills to leadership, and they've not developed those robust skills. And so if there's anyone who's looking for consultancy for me to come in and review their systems, then I'm able to do that.
Okay. Just before you go for the next slide, I'll take one more question. It's a common question. As a line manager or as a leader, this is coming from Zara, who was our previous speaker. How do you motivate the team? I mean, how do you motivate the team remotely? Any tips and hints there?
Okay, so the next section we're going to talk about is about motivating the team.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so that will be covered.
Just before you move on to the next one, then Teri, if you move your next slide, there's a very interesting question from Kalpana. Do you think that the COVID-19 employees have had to put their full trust that the employees will be performing same as in the office in front of them? As a lot of bosses like to see their employers physically, they want to see their employees physically. Otherwise, if you know, out of sight, out of mind. So what's your views on that one quickly?
Yeah, so trust is something which is really quite important in teams, in organizations. And if the work is adequately planned and delegated, then it's a case of expecting people to be able to get on with it and produce it. If people are motivated, they'll get on with the work and they know what to do. And also I'll be covering it, you know, if people have that full engagement and pride in the work they do, they'll want to get on with it, you know. But if people are demotivated, then those are where some of the areas where problems come. So I'll be covering some of the research which has been done about productivity and all of that. And then you'll see what are the elements that came out of this research. Because it's not just about talent. Sometimes the most talented teams are not the most productive. So we'll be looking at that.
All yours.
Yeah. So looking at team members, and I think we had a poll earlier where people were working in teams. Have we done that poll?
Yeah,
where people were working
let me
teams?
just check quickly. Working in teams, how often? Yeah, so I can share that. Do you want me to share that poll?
Yes, we can share that poll now.
So the first, I'm going to share this poll with you all, and here we go. So is your team all internal, mostly external, or external? So is your team all internal, mostly external, or the whole thing is external? So you've got about 20 seconds to go. Is your team all internal, mostly external, and all external? Take your time. It's all confusing stuff from Teri trying to confuse us right now. But is your team all internal, mostly external, or external? So 68% of you have voted. So I'm going to stop that at 70%. You're still voting in, so please keep your vote. 150 of you have voted now, and I'm going to share result with Teri. So Teri, as you can see, 38% says all internal, 37% say mostly internal, 23% say mostly external, and then 3% all external. What's your view?
Okay, that didn't come up on my screen, so I'll just have to go by what you've.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I can see. Yeah.
Okay. So all internal and mostly internal. Okay, so I guess people may be working with the external, but it's mostly. So let's say about 25% have some external element, and the rest are mainly internal. So that's quite interesting, because obviously if you're working internally, you all probably have the same organizational culture, although we know that different elements of an organization, maybe the technical people compared to HR, may have different cultures within their organization. So that's great. So yes, okay. So looking at teams, different types of teams. There's the star one, which is the first one, which we can see in that image, where it's just one person who's dealing with a range of people, and they're all really quite well gelled together, working on the same project, maybe having the same type of skills and experience, and that's likely to be an internal team. And then we have, and I'd say that is what you'd probably call like a flat team structure. And the next one is where you have a hierarchy. And we know that many of us work like this. And so your hierarchy is actually linked to another hierarchy. So maybe we have a director or CEO, and then we have other directors, or if it's a professional organization, we may have people who are associates, and then coming down to your design team where you're working. And so that's hierarchical team. And then we've got the next one, which is what they call the network. And now this network is quite likely to be, if it's a large organization, you may have link to another arm of the business, or it may be links to an external team. In this sort of instance, some people are probably being managed by line manager in another team, yet they're in your team as well. So you don't have absolute control over their time or their working culture, because they're linked with another team. Maybe they're with you 1 day a week, 2 days a week. And so a network team needs more sort of negotiation than a typical hierarchical team where they're within the same organization. So that's something to think about when you're leading a team. But also, what stage is the team? Because we know that some people have been working together for ages, they know each other. Sometimes it's a new team which has just started, and that's really difficult if maybe it was the first week of a project and suddenly you all had to go and work remotely. You were not so well gelled, you didn't know what your tasks were, and it's problematic. But there is some theory about teams, which some of you may be aware of, that when teams come together, there's that initial stage where they're forming. Usually people are quite polite with each other. You haven't formed your cliques yet. You're still sizing each other out. And you're not always productive, but you're all listening to each other and deciding, you know, who do I respect and who do I want to go with. Then there's a stage where you're storming and you're trying to decide, now, what do we do? Who do I go with? How is a project going to be planned? Who is going to undertake what stage? And once you have gone past that point, then you start to normalize. You know how you work, you know who has what role and who is doing what. And things are starting to progress. So a team can actually affect its productivity and performance. The next one is when you're all fully gelled. You've been working on this project for a long time. Everyone knows what they're doing, and that's fine. That's where you get the highest performance. So if you were not actually at that high performing stage and then you're having to work remotely, you're going to take time to get to that point. You may not actually get to the point where you may have been if you were all as a team. But then they say teams, and we know if you work on projects, a project comes to an end, and then you have to break up again. You adjourn, you all go in your different departments. Yeah. Maybe you come back together again and you can work, but that point of where you are adjourning is where you have to look at lessons learned. How can this feed into new projects going forward? So teams, looking at the context is as important as how you lead them and how you're assessing performance. And obviously, you may, as a leader, have full responsibility for the team if they're internal to you. They may be external. And at this point, I'll actually probably talk about a project which I was assessing as an award George in it was in Europe. Yeah. And the team, even though they were external, like a network team, they actually all came to the same location, which they called the big room. So these were engineers and architects and people from different organizations. As long as they were working on that team, they left their offices and came together there. You could bring your other work from your main practice there, but because they were working together as a team, they gelled and performance was really good. So that's something which is not sort of seen often, is it? But it's a new way of collaborating, a new way of working, and it reflected the type of contract that they had. And these people, they actually won the gold medal in that competition. Wow. Because they delivered on time. Their way of working, of using innovation to bring down the cost meant that they achieved savings. And so we really need to look at the way we work and collaborate and how that actually affects. Face-to-face is always best, but it's not always possible. Yeah. So what we'll do now is look at some of the research about team members and how you get the highest performance. The first one I'll look at is Google. But there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. I don't know if anyone has heard of that. That first of all, as human beings, we're looking to get our food, you know, and then once you've got your food, then you're looking for safety and security. And then after that, then you're looking for things like, you know, a job, and you have the job, then you're looking for the job to be meaningful, you know. So the more we get, the more we're wanting. So you want that job to be rewarding and all of that. So think about that when you're looking at this research from Google. It's available online. Of it that they said made a successful team is psychological safety. And this is actually trust. And they're saying if you're in a team where you feel you can speak out and no one is going to shut you down, people are going to look at what you've said, you know, and considered it. And if it's something they want to take on board, yes, they'll take it on board. If it's not, they'll tell you why they're not taking it on board. Not where you're in a team where you feel afraid to speak out, or if you speak out, you know, people are just going to ignore you, or the leader feels this is my way, you know, and nobody else says anything. So that's really quite important. That safety was the first element of success. The second thing is dependability. Can you depend on other people to actually do what they're supposed to do? And people are also depending on you to perform. So you want to perform adequately. Structure and clarity, I spoke about this before. Do you know what you're doing? Is it really clear? Because once you know, you can just take off and use the meaning of the work. Is that work meaningful for you? Is it actually achieving something on earth? Is it helping other people? Is it contributing to something? Because if your work is not sort of seen as meaningful, maybe it was a project which was in line with strategy, but now the company has moved away from that strategy. And so your project is not going to be important anymore. You'll get on with it, but that drive to perform is no longer there. And then finally, the impact of the work. Is it going to impact people positively? Because we know now people are looking at not just it creating profit, they're looking at the sustainability of the project. How is it going to impact other people? That was the first research. The second research I'll share with you, and this second research was to do with call handlers, people who took calls from other people. So you may feel that it doesn't actually relate to you as a professional or in your role, but let's look at what because that all these teams, they were all call handlers, but some people were more productive than others. So they looked and found three components. One was the energy of the team. Do they interact with each other? And in fact, when they're interacting, you know, the gestures they're making and, you know, really connecting with each other. The second one was how frequently they engaged. Are they engaging with each other, talking to each other? Maybe you discover something and say, do you know this? You know, shouting across the room or whatever. Then the third one was exploration. Are people actually going out of the group to go and see, talk to other groups, find out what's working for other groups and bringing it back to the group, which is like innovation, improving what we do. So these elements are what makes a productive team. So it's not just talent, it's actually how you interact together and how the work is structured and what the meaning of the work is. So like I said, it's beyond talent. As a leader or as a team member, you know that there's different elements. I don't know if any of you have come across the way, you know, the different people types. You know, people say, I'm a red, I'm a green, I'm a this, I'm a that. And it's all to do with the way our brains are, how we are naturally. Some people are task orientated, you know, like the accountant who loves their
Yeah.
figures, you know, and then some people just want it fast. The CEO, just tell me what's the outcome. You know, they don't want the detail. There's others who are people, you know, everyone knows them. They're laughing with everyone all the time. But there's people who are also people, but they are just more individual. So when you're dealing with a people person, you don't just go there and just start talking about business. You ask them about their family. How are you today? How was that ball game last week? You know, before you get onto the topic. These are all the things about building relationships with people. Whereas for a task-orientated person, you get to the point. They don't want too much small talk. And also, if it's someone who loves to analyze their things, you don't phone them and say, get it to me by the end of the day. No, that's not right. They want to take their time and work out the figures. Whereas if it's somebody who wants the overall picture, you don't bog them down with details. So in relating with your team members, you need to understand them. You need to alter the style to suit them. So you need to alter the style whether you're dealing in a one-to-one situation, in a group situation. People love praise. Compliment them on when they've achieved. Don't just compliment them in private. The group is there, you know. So it's not just while you're talking. It's also the way you write and communicate with people in writing, and it's also when you're communicating with them audio or other ways as well. So communicating intelligent, emotionally, you understand them, you understand, use the correct style, because it's not just when you're face to face, it's also in a video. If it's a person who loves people, you don't just start the call and get on with it. You have that small talk, even if it's on video, before you start. It shows you care, it shows that you understand, and people may not understand what you're doing, but they know that they're relating right with you, and change suits the situation as well.
Awesome.
So we just move on the team members. Sharing as well is quite important. Sharing successes and also picking things up early on. So team members, and team members can be quite wide. Yeah.
Just a quick one, because I've got a question which lined up with some of what you've just said. So if it's okay, we just take a few questions as it's kind of hot on the slides.
Okay.
So we've got a question from Derek Mason. Derek, in fact, we have the privilege and honor to receive Derek, who is the author of Will It Stand Up, which is the Olympic Stadium 2012. So Derek, welcome on board, and he will be the presenter in 2 weeks' time. So we have the honor and privilege. And Derek is asking you, the author of Will It Stand Up, which is the 2012 Olympic Stadium. We are working remotely due to COVID, and we have very good values and culture right now. How do we keep the culture going while working remotely? So we've got good culture going, is good vibe going right now, but how do we maintain it?
Yeah. So it's understanding your culture and what is working now, and seeing how well you can transfer that to a different platform. Because there's so many things which you're doing face to face, which you can actually transfer to virtual or remote working. I'll be covering some of those when I'm looking at the tools which you can use. So don't just assume that because the culture was face to face, you know, things like those water cooler moments, you can still have them. And when you're working remotely. So it's understanding what has been working for your team. How do you transfer that to remote working? Is it the processes? Is it the people who worked together? Is it the technology? And just trying to ramp it up to try to maintain the same kind of outcome as you're having in the past.
Okay. Thank you, Teri. You may continue.
Okay.
Some question later.
So it's remember that apart from team members, the stakeholders, because it's not all of a team who's sitting around your team meeting table, if you were having that previously. There's some other people who were not around the table, who were impacted by the project, who had an interest in the project. I mean, maybe your sponsor may not have been at your meetings, but they are a key stakeholder. Your suppliers may not be in the team meeting, but they are key stakeholders. Many of them will be external, but some of them may be internal as well. So we all know this RACI tool, which you use to identify your stakeholders, which is something you do quite early on in your project. First you identify them, you know, who is responsible, who's undertaking what task, who is accountable. And in terms of responsibility, you may have multiple people undertaking a particular task, which is fine, but it's important to identify a lead person. As for accountable, you only have one accountable person on any particular task. Some people need to be consulted. Those were the people who you CC'd on emails previously, because they are the ones who will answer questions. But it's not always by email. Some people need to be consulted by having meetings with them, by having focus groups. So if you are working remotely, you need to consider them when you're thinking about your tools and how do we communicate with those people. Then there's other people who have to be kept informed. And maybe you did that previously by email, but you have to find some other ways of communicating with them. People don't just want to be bombarded with emails while they're remote working. And that's where collaboration tools can come in, where people get notifications about certain documents being put in the repository without you pinging them emails all the time. So once you've identified them, you know who you need to communicate with, who you need to collaborate with, point of the project. You map. This is really quite important because there's always power and influence in any project. There are people who are allies and there are people who are not allies. Some may not want to see your project succeed. But those with the most power and interest are the people you need to manage closely, keep them on side. And remember, this can shift throughout the project. So don't think I've done it once and that's fine. COVID may have changed everything. So you need to reassess again to see who's still an ally. Am I maintaining that relationship? Am I still keeping them on board? So people who are low interest, low power, they need minimum effort. But remember, they could suddenly align themselves with powerful people. So don't just always ignore them because they could bring, you know, people to assist them. But this 2x2, you know, a model is something which you should be using on your projects if you're not already using it, knowing who you keep informed, who you keep satisfied, and constantly monitoring it. And also at the start of the project, you need to agree communication. How do we engage? How do we collaborate? But when something like COVID occurs, you need to be speaking to them again to see what has changed, what is the best way we should be keeping in touch with you. Just the direct team members who you're managing. There's a whole range of others who you need to collaborate with. So I think this may be the last slide that we have on. I think there may be one or two more. The team members. So I'll just carry on before we move on to the collaboration.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So it's knowing who, what, when, and how. That's really important. And when the situation at again. Don't just focus on the team members. So supporting team members, team size matters. Like I said, how can you manage and collaborate with 100 people? You need to probably break it down into smaller size and allocate leaders for each of those smaller teams, and then collaborate with those leaders who are collaborating with others. There may be situations where all of you can come together in a Zoom meeting, but large meetings like that are not always the most effective for managing a team. Create new rituals, like that other person who raised a question who said, we have a culture that works now, and then we're having to move it on to virtual. So some of those may be able to move to virtual, but maybe not, in which case you need to create new meet rituals. Maybe it's at 9 a.m. morning coffee together, or 9 a.m. quick call. People who work with Agile already have that touching base every day, but people who are working more traditionally with waterfall methods may not actually have that. So create new rituals which you can adopt for virtual work.
Yeah.
Mix the formal and the informal. People, will just get fatigued with video conferencing, with video meetings, everything formal. You need to have the informal, like you can still have your ice cooler breaks, where maybe it's a tea time, everyone gets a break. What are you having? Coffee, I'm having water, whatever. And so you're using this technology for informal elements. I know a group of people who on a Friday at 6 p.m. after work, they have their drinks. Okay, they're still remote, but everyone has their drink and you're relaxed and chatting. So it's not always formal management and formal procedures.
Yeah.
These tools, we know people are using them at home informally. People are getting married on them. People are doing all sorts. So use it formally as well as informally. Open door time. Because at this time, people may say, maybe I don't want to pick up the phone. If they were in the same office, they could see your door was open and they could come in. So at this time, let people know when you're available. What's the policy about people contacting you? Is it every morning between 9 and 10, or is it in the evening between 4 and 5? But also for individuals, let your line manager know when it's a good time for them to contact you on a one-on-one. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the possibility of diary sharing and all of those, which technology enables you to do. And even if you cannot sync your diaries, there's tools like Doodle. I'm sure most of you know that, which people can fill out in advance. So you can go and look at the Doodle to see when people are free. Requesting feedback is really important. The leader is telling people, how is it for you? How are you coping? But also, they should be asking, am I contacting you enough? So that people can tell you if they want more contact or less. I mean, I heard about some manager, leader, and this is really not good practice, who had the Zoom meeting on all day so that they could contact people at any time instead of saying, I'll pick up the phone, so they'll just holler out at you and talk to you. That's not how to lead at a time like this. So what's working elsewhere? That's where you go out and look to see what's working. People may come and say, oh, my partner is working and this is what they're doing. So you learn from others. You speak to people in your sector. What are you doing? You bring it back to your own organization. We shouldn't be insular at a time like this. We should go and see where there's innovation elsewhere.
Yeah.
Silent strugglers, those people who just get on and try to get on and don't ask for help. There's lots of those. They don't want to trouble people. They feel they're failures. Watch out for that if you're a leader, so that you can read the signals. If you're having regular one-to-ones with your small team, you'll be able to pick that up quite easily. So workload, what's important? People shouldn't be trying to do everything. If you say, look, this is what's important this week, this is what is essential, because there's important versus essential. It's deciding what needs to be done. And that will come down from whatever strategy has been adopted, or you looking at the workload and thinking, this is what we need to do now. Yeah. There's nothing like someone spending a lot of time doing something and just seeing it being put aside. Yeah. Allowing time to reflect and work. So it's not bombarding people with messages, meetings, and all whatnot. people need time to work as well. They need time to look at that message, see how it's going to impact their working way, think about it, and then undertake the work. And then maintaining the boundaries. We all know about the work-life balance, you know. So the fact that you may be sending someone an email at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., let them know you don't need a response immediately. But really, why are you sending it at that time? Why can't it wait till the morning? Because some people may feel that obliged that they have to respond at that hour.
Correct.
So it's important to maintain the boundaries. And some people may have childcare now. They may decide that at this time I have to take a break because of this. But if you know the people you're working to, you will know that people will say, maybe I'm going to start earlier because I need to take a break at this time. If you can't work flexibly at home, where can you work flexibly? You know, so that's quite important. Communication, communication, constantly checking in. Okay. I think there's one more slide before we move on to the collaboration tool. So
Teri, just to let you know, Teri, we've got about 7 minutes left for your presentation to be over.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, so what I'll do is just a quick slide on team meetings. I don't spend too much time on that. Probably doing it successfully at the moment. So it's a case of, is it actually necessary? Just because you have it set up weekly, is there actually new information you need to be covering now? Has everyone you've invited, are they actually necessary, or could they be doing something better, you know, progressing something? Is there an agenda, or are you just setting it and, you know, things are just popping up? You know, is the time convenient? Because you know when people are working.
Yeah.
Is the length right? Important that people log on early, because what you don't want is the first 15 minutes, people are still trying to log on, you know. People may be in another meeting and trying to start something at exactly on the hour. They may not have had time to finish the other meeting. So sometimes people are saying, we start at 5 past, but log on, you know, on the hour if you can. Is it interactive? Because what we don't want is what we call sort of death by point, you know, where it's one person who's just talking and people are not able to engage. Tech accessible. Are you using something where maybe someone is only using a tablet and then they cannot actually access it? They actually don't even have a laptop.
Yeah.
And are all people participating? It's important to ensure that everybody is speaking, that you're going around the room and asking for people's opinion, and then get feedback at the end of it. How did it work? Is there anything we need to change next time? And also, what's the next action after the meeting? Because if you're all just talking and then it ends, what was the point?
Yeah.
There's something there about running team meetings. I think we're going on to collaboration tools.
Yeah.
If there's a poll at this point, or if I should just
Yeah.
best,
We don't have. Yeah, so we don't have any poll on that one, Teri. So you can just, we've got 5 minutes left.
Okay, we've
got 5 minutes left before we take some questions. So we need to stop at 7. So then we can take some questions and then.
Okay.
So 5 minutes on your presentation.
Yeah, okay. So collaboration tools, there are different types of tools. Some of you may have come across the synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous are when things are happening at the same time. You're all at the Zoom meeting together. Asynchronous is when it's recorded and people could go and watch it at a later point. Synchronous is could be a text message which someone is receiving and responding to. It could be also something which you're not expecting a response straight away. So if it's happening at a meeting, it's usually happening together. If it's outside of a meeting, then you're probably expecting people to respond at a later time. It may be a workshop as well, where you have a workshop with specific collaboration tools. Text or messaging. I've put text there because I know in Africa, not everyone has got data to have all these wonderful apps and things. There may be people in your organization or people in your team only receive text or audio. So you need to think about that then. If you're setting up a WhatsApp group, who is actually not able to participate? Or there may be messages which you're sending out about what's happening the next day or don't come into work. You don't want to miss out people and they've made a journey and spent some money doing that. There's also the audio, and audio, we know there's different elements of that. There's video as well. There's a repository, which I spoke about, where you put documents, the screen sharing, which you can do within presentations, but even when you're in the office, like I spoke about screen sharing with staff, so you can actually see what they're doing. Because trying to describe something, especially people like us who are designing and drawings and saying, look above that room and that line, that's not the easiest thing. Just share your screens and then you can look at the work, see them starting to alter it, and then they're on their own. Then also, do you go for a system or do you go for something with add-ons? And sometimes we have specialist things which are specialist software, whereas other people have more generic. How do we overcome that? Do we use something which is in the cloud, which people can access anywhere, or do we have something on a server in the office which people are having to dial in to access and put in passwords? And also, are we working with apps which are easily available? Well, so I'll just move on to the slide, which just gives a bit of this. Some things are informal and chatty, and other things are more formal. So depending on who you're communicating with, you use. Text, chats are something which you can have all the time. People within your team, and there's software which allows you to do this. Things like Slack, even things like WhatsApp, you're able to communicate with your team. So those are commentary back on, or email more formal, we have to send information. And there's good old landline. I'm sure some people are still using that. But most people these days are using a mobile, but there's also a voice message which you can use for people's messages, or you can even send messages on WhatsApp. Again, for maybe wanting to deal with something sensitive, so that you're not getting that sensitive data out there to the wrong person, or maybe one issue is best not to deal with it by email, best to use telephone one-on-one. And then there's video. This is really for team planning, meeting reviews, but also when you're running workshops, it's good for that as well. It's good for relationship building, where you're seeing people face to face and where it may be a sensitive issue as well. So like I said, when you want to get a decision from many people, you're all seeing each other, you're doing it at the same time, but also sometimes it's recorded so that people can do catch-ups a bit later. So so that is I think all of my, I've got the Menti poll now, or shall I show some of the tools which people can use?
Yeah, so let's do the Menti, because I think the Menti is really groundbreaking. So we're going to try something really special. So so basically what we're going to do, guys, we're going to do a Menti poll. So wherever you are, you can flick on your phone and then you can vote live. So I'm going to share this my screen with you. And what's the password, Teri? Do you have it?
Yeah, it's I'll put it on the screen. It's 307385. Can you see that on my screen?
Right, everybody, can you write this down? 30. I'm just gonna put that on the chat as well. So 307385. So you need to log in on menti.com, right? So we're gonna do something really, really special today. And let me just type in Menti. menti.com.
Yeah.
Right, so you need to type in on menti.com and put that password. I'm now going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share that so then you can see. So can everybody see my screen on Menti? Wow, already people are putting it. Whoa.
Yeah.
Awesome. So already I can see that you're putting in it, and there's people everywhere. So can you put anywhere you are, even from Mauritius, the places you are, where there's Catrabon, there's Port Louis, there's Canada, UK, India, South Africa. So it's all going live right now. 22 people of you, Singapore as well. So as we can see that right live now. And Teri, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, that's amazing. And these are the sort of tools which you can use in your presentation to just make them a lot more interactive and engage with your audience.
Yeah.
And so they can actually see it, the change that's happening as people are voting. And obviously you all know that this is a word cloud, and
Yeah.
which is something which you use to convey information. So this is going beyond just your percentages and your charts. You're getting a visual way, because when you're running remote meetings, it needs to be more engaging. It needs to be visual.
Yeah,
There's also
awesome.
technology that allows you to use graphics as well, to draw as well. We haven't used that, but you need to start to explore that, particularly if you're a team where you're designing, then you need to use technology that allows you to engage.
So already you can see people all over the world right now. We've got Nigeria, Canada, Singapore, Zambia, Malaysia, Rwanda, Conakry, Guinea, in West Africa, Netherlands. We have lots of colleagues from Mauritius as well. So I'm going to move on to the next question now. And then let's see how interactive that is. So the next question is, what is the most important when selecting collaboration tool? So again, if you can see on your phone, please, please, please put them in. And it will guide you to the next question. So what is the most important tool when selecting collaboration? Teri, can you see the screen there?
Yes, I can see it changing. It's interesting that, you know, at the moment, ease of use is the greatest. You know, people want something which the majority of people are able to use. Integration. I mean, it's interesting that cost is not such a huge thing, but I know that a lot of these collaboration tools, you get free versions, and so cost may not always be an issue. But when it comes to scalability, that's where it may be an issue, because it's one thing using Zoom for the free one, but we know it's only for 40 minutes. And so if you want a longer minute, you have to start thinking about cost.
Okay, awesome.
And also if it's a system which you want to collaborate with others, can you scale it up in your organization and within the team? So that's quite interesting.
All right.
Security.
So Teri, let me do the next one.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. As you can see, 50% of you are saying ease of use, security 30%, cost 2%. It seems like, it's getting competitive. So I'm just going to move to the next one. And then that's the last question of today. What collaboration tool do you find most useful? So everybody, again, use the same code 307385. What collaboration tool do you find most useful? Again,
and here you can just write it in. Yes, Teams. Yes, Teams. Oh, Teams is quite a popular one, isn't it? Zoom.
Yeah, it's good. So it's lots of people are putting
AutoCAD.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have lots of techies here.
Wow. So as I can scroll on the screen, there's lots of Teams, Zoom, email, Revit. Beam 360, Teri. Beam 360.
Yes, that's one of the ones which I put on my list.
Yeah. So 70.
Zoom, WhatsApp.
Wow. 75 participants has already voted. And Google Meetings, Teri, Team Viewer.
Yes. So these are all things which are most of them on my list. But the other ones, and I'm hoping I'll be able to scroll on my list so that if people want to take an image or something, because there's lots of tools out there. Something like Slack It's a collaboration tool. I don't know if many of you use it, which has many functions. You can use it as a repository. You can use it for chat. You can use it for video. You can integrate it in with other things. So it's not always just individual things. It's where you can bring things together so people can use it from one location rather than having to switch from one app to another. And if you're doing something like workshops, there's tools which you can use there where you can replicate your post-it notes so people are able to participate like that. So it's investigating and finding what are the tools out there, because you may not know it all, but just speak to other people, explore. And lots of them have got a free version, so you can try it out before you actually commit and buy.
Okay, Teri, so, okay, Teri, thank you. So I'm going to stop sharing. The menti.com has worked, everybody. Could you put your hands up for Teri, please, for this amazing innovation while we're on Zoom? So I'm going to now finish off now, Teri, in about 5 minutes. And we're going to, okay, everybody, can you put your hands up, please, for Teri, for this awesome presentation? We've got 180 of you right now. So please, please, please. And I'm going to need just to conclude now before we finish off. So Teri, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, I can.
So I just say thank you to you, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done today. So thank you very much, and for being here today with us. So we've got questions, we've done the survey, and I want to just do the survey again because a lot of people were reticent when we started. So I'm just going to say, is remote working the future? And I'm just going to launch the polling again. And then please, we had 80% earlier. So is remote working the future? Earlier, we had 80% of you said yes, and 10% said no. So let's see now after Teri's presentation, if, so let's just see if indeed, if everything is okay. So let's see if Teri has convinced you that yes. So I'm gonna, 70% of you have voted. 76%, please put your vote in. And I'm gonna share the result with Teri. And Teri, the votes are here. And
wow,
91% is saying yes. So there has been an increase of 11% to say yes, remote working is now the future. So already, Teri, your presentation has already made some impact on all of us. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to finish off the slide as well. So right. So before we conclude, I want to just share a book with you. I'm not going to read all of it. I've been reading this one, Teri. It's about thinking remote, and it talks about psychological safety in online meeting. A very important book, I believe. And this is chapter 5. It's a very cheap book. It's about £7 or £8. Virtual Leadership, another very great book.
Yes.
And it's Trisha's story. So Trisha is a chartered quant surveyor and a project manager in Scotland. Hear her story of planning a new town center, working virtually with many other professionals. Despite the team not being spread around the world, I used to offer consultancy services as a chartered quant surveyor. Working from home, I prepared bill of quantities and contractors quantities for a range of projects varying in type, from school athletics campuses to civil engineering program from flood prevention. So this is a great book. All I'll say is innovate or stand still. So as you can see, there's a crow sitting on the branch, and the rabbit is trying to do the same before the fox came and ate the rabbit. So to sit and do nothing, you need to be on top. So unless we are the crow, as an industry, we need to constantly rethink the way we do things. So remote it or loaf it.
Love it.
I think Teri liked that one very much. So on the whole, the ongoing COVID-19 situation could lead us to an uptake of tech. As Teri has mentioned, the world goes back to work. Having been forced upon us now, there may be a new willingness to adopt new ways of working that wasn't present before. So forthcoming CPD, why inclusive design matters on Saturday. They'll be will stand up by the one and only Derek Mason, who's listening to us right now. So it'll be an honor to have him as well on board. So take care, be safe. As Sir Bruce said, the late Sir Bruce Forsyth, keep a nice 2 meters wherever you are, especially on site. So we've talked about that. And again, once again, can you put a big round of applause to Teri from UK right now? And I want to just stop sharing now. And Teri, your final word of wisdom to 175 participants listening to right now, your word of wisdom before you. I think we're going to have part 2, Teri, because you can really present, energetic, smiling. You know, I've really enjoyed every single minute of it. So what's your word of wisdom to Mauritius, Africa, India, and to the world right now?
So I think there's a Chinese saying that when the wind blows, do you build walls or do you build a windmill?
Wow, awesome. Awesome statement, Teri. So Teri, thank you very much indeed. If you can, we are now at 2 hours and 15 minutes of CPD.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, which will be certifying for a CPD. So everybody, can you put a big round of applause? Please put your comments on WhatsApp and on email. All your feedback will be welcome to ensure that Teri, for giving back her time, her knowledge, her wisdom. And I'm sure we're going to see Teri again because of her amazing presentation today. So I think we've covered most of the question and I think we've catch up everything. So thank you, everybody. It's been great. Teri, big wave to the participant, please.
Yeah.
And
Bye.
thank you for the Menti.com, because I was, to be honest with you guys, I was reluctant to use Menti. Teri said, no, you got to use Menti, and Menti work. And I think we all going to use that now. So Teri, a big wave to everybody, and with your big smile, and thank you very much. So take care, everybody. Thank you very much, Teri, for everything. And see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, then.
Thank you. Bye.